neon, one of the noble gases harnessed since the 1910s to burn messages into the urban night, bringing us the words Shinzano, Grand Palais, Guinness is good for you, and in the work of Tracy Emin, Never Again, Trust Yourself, and Is Anal Sex Legal? Little throwback to our previous discussion there. The philosopher Luis de Miranda is the inventor of the concept of Creole, a negotiation between the real and the created, which he suggests might provide us with a way of thinking about our place in the cosmos. He admits it sounds a bit new agey, but his new book is about neon and how that technology might also provide us with a way to look at the universe. You are going to be gentle with us, Lewis. I sense that we may get into quite esoteric territory here, and I want to be sure I can come at least some of the way with you.
I can be gentle if you promise to be gentle.
So, we're in Paris, 1912, looking at the first neon sign. What in the world is different at this moment?
I think we're entering a century, as we saw a little bit before, where people are going to try to find a place in this sort of massive fight, massive competition, massive corporate world where people feel like a little bit like soldiers. They are atomized. There is much less sense of community than before. So one of the solutions to that is to become a neon sign. What does that mean, right?
What does that mean?
This is what I call neonness. And I use the neon as a metaphor for the 20th century. What is a neon? Is made of glass and gas. And these two realities, very physical realities, they are quite opposite, right? So, as you said, neon is a noble gas. And that, for me, symbolizes the creative chaos. And indeed, it is an element that is chaotic itself. It's very hard to control. But then suddenly you put it in a glass and you give it a definite shape, which is often a slogan, etc. And that is, I think, what people have been trying to do all around the century, right? To sort of constrain the plurality that they feel inside themselves into a function, a shape that becomes both a prison and a way of being in the world.
And how were these thoughts triggered in you? Was there a moment when you were looking at a sign and saw that this was a kind of a metaphor for how we might conduct ourselves in the world, or for the experience of the last century?
Yes, it was in 2011, in the winter in Paris. I was feeling quite lonely walking around the Louvre. The really old part of Paris, right? You have the Pont Neuf, which is actually the oldest bridge in Paris. And then suddenly there was this kebab shop with this neon that sort of symbolized and summarized globalization in just a few words: a crepe, kebab, pizza, tea, cake. And I stopped, and immediately this pun came to my mind in French: l'être et le néant, which of course refers to Sartre's book L'être et le néant, right?
Jean-Paul Sartre.
Yeah. And then of course I didn't think it would be serious to write a book about neon. And I went on with my other projects, which one could wonder if they are more serious than this one. But slowly I did the research. In fact, I was invaded by this image, by this reality, by this object. A little bit like when Heidegger observed the Van Gogh shoes from all perspectives. This is what I did with neon, and I discovered amazing things. So, of course, there are historical things. For example, neon started as a luxury object. It decorated the opera in Paris. But there is also this idea that, in fact, it is a crafted object. You cannot mass produce it. So it occupies this sort of...
It has to be blown by an individual.
Exactly. And it's a very careful craft that is today practiced only by a few. So neon occupies this sort of position between the old world, right? Its name, it's very mysterious, right? It means neo in Greek, the novelty. And the promise, Baudrillard called it the promise of this rivers of plenty that would come forever with the expansion of capitalism.
It's always been a trigger from its beginning for avant-garde thinking and avant-garde art. Why did it appeal to those moderns? What did they see in it? Artists like Moholy-Nagy and all sorts of thinkers have engaged with neon.
And the futurists, we usually forget that the futurists, a few months after the first barbershop was illuminated by a neon in Paris, they decided to make an exhibition in Paris with their names as neon signs. So I think it fascinates precisely because it is like us a contradiction between a richness that we feel inside that needs to be expressed in many ways, and the fact that when we go in the world, when we look for a job, when we look for a place in this society, we need to minimize who we are and present a certain identity. We've seen in the previous section how difficult it can be for someone. Those norms, those identities are not yet recognized.
Does neon make the world less solid, the city less solid? Because it represents the urban. It's part of the materiality of the city. And yet it is a gas, and it's something very fragile.
I think that's the paradox today, is that it has become almost an object of nostalgia, a reference to all sorts of poetic deambulations that represent something lost already, right? Today it is replaced by LED lights, which are themselves much more discrete. If you look them very close, you realize that they're points. Like our reality today. I was at the airport a few hours ago and I saw this publicity for a bank, and basically it said, we are preparing a future of bytes and boxes. And I think that was not ironical. That's the future we are preparing today, even with the way we illuminate our realities.
How does the meaning of neon shift as it migrates around the world? It begins in Paris. It begins as a kind of European expression. It becomes very closely associated with America and American capitalism, but also the Soviet bloc tries to kind of rework it to its own ends. What happened there?
Yes, there was a program called neonization. Where,
like electrification,
yes,
the great Leninist plan.
Yes, and the problem was that, of course, we wanted to have neons, for example, in Warsaw, the capital of Poland, but there were not enough shops in that regime. So they started putting neons as to indicate that there was a public library, for example, which in fact was a return to the origins of neon. Today, we see a comeback of neon in, for example, the facade of theaters, right? I saw one 1 or 2 years ago, the Comédie Française, right? The center for the prestige of French theatre in the last 500.
Royal Court Theatre in London is still proudly burning its red neon over Sloane Square.
But that was a red neon, Comédie Française, in the middle of the Palais Royal, and that brought an ironical sense to it when you look at French politics today.
So can neon, if neon was identified with progress, now it's become a kind of locus of nostalgia. Can it regain that energy? Can it be progressive again, or is it always now an object of nostalgic contemplation?
Well, no, I think that neon carries a promise with it, because we can always explode the glasses and free the gases and perhaps develop a form of shaping that is not imposed on us, but that we contribute to together. But in a sense, I think that neon, whether it's coming back or whether it's an object of the past, is replaced by other types of lighting that still reflect our obsession with light, which we had before neon and which we will have after neon, and as opposed to perhaps a care for other senses, which is what I develop in the book, listening, touching, and perhaps senses that we are not aware of.
So neon should be an aid to stimulate thought then. We shouldn't mourn the disappearance of neon, but we should enjoy something about its explosive possibilities.
That's a good way to put it.
Thank you very much, Luis de Miranda, whose Being and Neonness is out now. That's where I turn the lights out here. Let me thank our guests, Luis de Miranda